Are we still locked on? Just stay locked on to my face. All right, hopefully you're locked on. If not, it's a really big letdown because it's a waste of footage. All right. Okay guys, what's going on? I put up an Instagram Q&A option this morning on my story about routines. I just did a recovery routines podcast, and I had already been getting like a lot of questions regarding that. So I threw up a question box, and I'm just going to go through the list of all of these particular questions regarding routines, and we'll hammer these out. Hopefully can provide as much context as possible. I will say I'm having trouble speaking today. Like, words are not coming out in the fluidity in which one hopes when speaking to a camera and an audience, but it's fine because we grind, and the shirt kind of makes me feel jacked. You're welcome for these cool colored shorts too. Okay, here we go. First question by Caden.Peterson21. How many cups of coffee do you have in the morning / preferred coffee type? Honestly, of late, I've been doing like a half a cup of coffee because my routine when I'm home is very different in regards to like how it would be in the season. When I'm home, I wake up and I get out in the living room and I'm like, what am I doing? Why do I sit here? Like, let's go. And I immediately start my morning routine by pouring like half a cup of coffee, a little bit of heavy cream, blending that up, and then grabbing my water jug, 5 gallons, and then 2 gallons for the backpack. And then I go, and then usually what I'll do is either A, drink the coffee before the walk, or B, put it in a paper cup and drink it while I walk. Preferred coffee type, my favorite is Cafe Bustelo. All right, JHX2_45 wants to know warm-up routine before lifting. Yeah, honestly, it's not a whole lot. I will take very similar movements that I'm going to be using in the actual training program and just try to replicate those as best as possible in more of like a body weight setting. But for me, when it comes to like warm-up, I try to be extremely intentional throughout the entire day to just like stay ready, right? Like I try to avoid like long periods of sitting down. I try to avoid like long periods of just inactivity. So honestly, like, it's funny to think when I was 21, I needed, or thought I needed, more of a warm-up than I do now at 19. Get it? Nah, 29. But yeah, I'll come out here, get the body moving a little bit, move some weights. The last few days, my warm-up routine before lifting has literally been like trying to organize this lab. That's usually accurate. Okay, yeah. Andrew_Schneider_2 wants to know, do you have a cool down routine after throwing? This has been a variable throughout like my entire career. I still am a big routine guy, but I used to be like a big time post routine or post throw routine guy, where it was like I was doing freaking wrist cuffs, dumbbells, bands, plyo ball throws, freaking yoga, and all this stuff. And I think just throughout the years and just being more in tune with like my body and my arm, and essentially like what I needed and didn't need, and how I felt post game compared to how I felt post game if I didn't do like anything, it was relatively the same. And I was like, why am I continuing to add on stress after I just already stressed the organism like tenfold during performance? So yes, I do have a cool down routine, but it's not necessarily a cool down routine. It's more of a hot. I like to use heat, sit in a hot tub, a sauna after performance. That's actually found better for recovery purposes anyways. And then journaling, like just being mindful of like that performance, writing things down and being like, okay, this is what I need. Even using like some film. I usually actually won't do the film until like the next morning. But the night of is usually you're so wired, right? Because you just performed. It's easy to, sacrifice sleep because of that. So I try to just down regulate the central nervous system, journal, hot tub, hang out, hydrate. There you go. Do you believe your routine to be your mental anchor? That's a great question. I love the word anchor. I've been thinking about it a lot lately, like what anchors you, what centers you. It's a really, I got to do a podcast on that. Do I believe it to be my mental anchor? Mentally, no. I wouldn't say mental anchor. I think I see what you're saying though in regards to like the mental side of like the anchoring of why you would do a routine for the confidence portion of it. I've talked about this a lot too in regards to, you know, put in all of the necessary and intelligent work that you potentially can to limit the amount of self-doubt that you have when in performance. So yeah, I guess you could say, because I know that for me, like my routines, there's so many different routines that I have, but all of those routines, I know that I'm doing the right things for my personal growth. So yeah, I guess you could say like from a mental standpoint, like it's helping, it's an anchor. It allows me to grow in a confidence aspect of it. Right. So yeah, the reason why I initially thought no was because my routines are constantly fluctuating, and it's I'm always like seeking the next thing. So I felt like anchors are obviously super stable, and physically when I'm doing routines, they're changing. They're essentially trying to evolve, which I wouldn't say is an anchor. Hopefully that made sense. Meditation routine. Yeah, great question. Don't really talk about this all too much. I have a couple different meditation routines. I guess you would say like mindfulness practice is a meditation. Sitting in the cold tank, sitting in the hot tub is a meditative practice. For me, being a man of faith, like I'll meditate on like God's word, or even just throw like some worship music in my headphones and just meditate and just praise. But there's so many different types of meditation, I suppose, now that I'm thinking about it. But my biggest go-to, I would say, for meditation is like, how good can I be at honing in and just putting all of my focus and center points on like my breath and avoid thought. I've talked about this in regards to how, you know, pitchers are at their best when they're in flow state. The Rise of Superman, it's a book, you should check it out. And you're at your optimal performance when you're flow. And I try to intentionally train in a way that allows me to get into that state relatively easier. Being able to just turn off internal and external noise and just focus on your breath. That's something that just doesn't happen like this. It is something that you can practice, right? For meditative practice as well, like I said, cold tank and sauna, that's something that I'm in a very uncomfortable environment, and I try to train my ability to accept and acknowledge the uncomfort, but still lock in and be in the moment and be present with my breath. What's your recovery routine? Check out the podcast I just did. Any advice for sleep routines when you have trouble sleeping before games? Yeah, check out the podcast I just did. I talked about sleep. That was a huge integral part of like the routine of obviously recovery and just optimal performance in general. Check out the podcast, recovery routines, therobbyroshow.com/recovery, because I also give a lot of like tips on the supplementation that I use for sleep stacks and some of the things that I'm kind of incorporating in a routine that allows me to give myself a better opportunity to sleep. Funny that we talk about sleep, because I slept the last 2 nights, I've slept terrible. Breakfast routine, I do not eat breakfast. Recovery day after outing, that is going to vary. Anytime I think, well, it's going to vary depending on like starter and reliever. That's obvious. But sometimes my body feels fan-frickin-tastic after an outing. Sometimes it don't. So I'm gonna be more present in the moment than like having a strict guideline of things that I follow throughout the week, when in reality, like that's not the way that your body and your arm or even your mind work, right? What's your post-throwing routine as far as recovery? I think I mentioned some things earlier. Like I don't really have a drastic post-throwing routine. You know, even if it's just throwing, like playing catch or playing long toss, like nothing's really drastic. I do try to avoid like a period of more than 30 minutes of sitting down, like after throwing or after any activity, because then I feel like everything just gets compressed and it's like. So honestly, like I'll do an earthing walk, 30 minutes, just do something moving, probably come in here and just do some jumping jacks and cartwheels, honestly. Like I think movement is medicine. I think that's someone's Instagram account. But when we look at it, like for me to be constantly seeking optimal performance, I need to be aware of certain things that could really prohibit that. And I think for me, long periods of inactivity, sitting on the couch per se after a training session or after a throwing session, those things I really don't respond well to. Why do I hit the sauna before the cold tub versus the opposite? So I do that because a particular experience that I've had when going the opposite route, cold to hot. I don't know the science behind it, so if you want to learn more about that, check it out on your own. But for me personally, I went through an experience of like, my body felt so bad on an occasion where I did an ice bath and then went directly into the hot tub. And you know that feeling when you go from cold to hot, regardless of what how many times you've done it, I guess, in a plunge setting. If you go cold to hot, you get in that hot and it's like things start tingling and whatever. I had that same feeling for literally like 24 hours straight, and I hated it. And then ever since then, I did my research in terms of looking at like the benefits, if there was anything different in regards to how you organize that and set that up. And there wasn't really much out there, much data, supporting that. So I was like, all right, I'll just do hot, cold. And I think it's, for me, practicing like the mental toughness, it's a lot harder to go from hot to cold. I just think that's harder, right? Is that, now that I'm thinking about it, is that not true? No, that's got to be true. It's definitely harder to go from like super hot, scalding hot, because I know it's hard as crap when I'm in the morning and I come outside, it'll be like cold and I'll have steam coming off me and I'll get right in the freaking 45-degree tank and it's like, holy smokes, this is brutal. How many days a week do I train hip mobility? I do something for hip mobility every night, every day. How many days a week do you train hip mobility? Didn't I just answer that? Oh, that's the same question, sorry. Yeah, I'll do some sort of hip mobility every day. I do some Wim Hof. Yeah, so he said, Isaac wants to know, are the ice baths you take from the Wim Hof method? Yeah, I do a lot of Wim Hof breathing method and stuff. Obviously not as extreme. I do a lot of Mind Strong stuff, which I think, do a lot of Wim Hof as well. Nightly routine for them gains. I think to optimize your gains, you want to make sure that you're setting yourself up for a really good night's sleep, and a really good night's sleep consisting of a lot of deep sleep, which will allow you to recover. So then the next day you can hit it again. So for me, the nightly routine, I mentioned in the podcast, be sure to check that out. Okay. All right, that's all I got, guys. That's only in like 3 hours in, so there's probably going to be more that hopefully I can get to on another day. But thanks for tuning in. Back to the office I go.